Majority Report with Sam Seder. It's time to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, July 31st, 2018. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, contributing editor to the Atlantic magazine, Annie Lowrey, on her book, Give People Money: How the Universal Basic Income Would End Poverty, Revolutionize Work, and Remake the World. Also on the program today, North Korea punked Donald Trump. Hopefully it won't lead to war. Meanwhile, Iran says thanks, but no thanks to a Trump visit. Hopefully won't lead to a war. White House wants to unilaterally cut more of rich people's taxes, and they think they can. Meanwhile, the Pentagon launches Space Force. Yeah. And imagine that. A federal court has the audacity to insist that our government must get consent before they drug immigrant children. Can you imagine? Lastly, LeBron James birthed a school and put Bill Gates to shame. All this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. We have Brendan on the board today. He's doing a little dry run. So folks, if you have any issues with the board today, you know that it's Brendan, not Matt, just so that Matt doesn't get, any nasty emails or anything like that. Brendan's going through it. So far, so good, Brendan. I got a little bit confused because the disparity between the music and my voice. And I had the volume in there, but everything else is good. How you doing? Doing okay? I'm fine. Yeah, you got to put your microphone up when you talk. All right. We will get to all this and more. Oh, let's start with this. Rudy Giuliani, he's having this rolling nervous breakdown in public, and it's sort of fascinating to watch. Of course, Rudy Giuliani, his whole strategy at this point, I think this is the strategy of the entire administration, is this is probably going to end up as a situation where the public will be the arbiter as to whether Donald Trump and those around him, or maybe not those around him, but whether Donald Trump should be impeached or go to jail. And any type of impeachment, and I don't know if it's going to be from Russia, collusion, or whatever it is. But I think they definitely feel this way. They are, and for a long time they've been trying to, and they know that impeachment is a political process. There is no scenario. People have asked me this over the past year or two. There is no scenario where Robert Mueller comes in and says, we've indicted the president and, put the cuffs on him. That can't happen. The indictment of a president comes from Congress. The conviction of the president comes from the Senate. And it's in the form of impeachment. Subsequent to that, could there be criminal charges brought in a traditional criminal court? Yes. But there is no scenario where he gets led out in handcuffs. So the Trump people know this is a political process, and they are constantly trying to muddy the waters. The problem that Rudy Giuliani has is that he's just loves the sound of his own voice. And I'm saying this as someone who loves the sound of his own voice. And Rudy Giuliani, look, when you have to explain a joke, it's not funny. And when you have to explain your spin, it's not effective. Here he is on Outnumbered yesterday, trying to clean up the mess that he made on that same network just hours before.
But when I said today that there was no collusion and therefore, and that collusion also is no crime, I've been saying that from the very beginning. So did John Dowd. It's a very, very familiar lawyer's argument that the alternative. My client didn't do it, and even if he did it, it's not a crime.
Yeah, I mean, it is. That is actually a classic lawyer's argument, except for Rudy Giuliani is really his TV lawyer. And the judge and jury in this case is not a judge and jury, but it's the public. So when you have to explain your spin, you're losing.
He's saying things that even some Fox viewers might be like, really?
Yeah, because it's just like, it's all for them. It's just like, well, that's not common sense.
Right.
That's not something.
Understand that collaborating with a foreign government because of computer hacking, I get that the founders weren't psychic. I mean, obviously we should reinstitute slavery because it was in the Constitution. But on the other hand, I'm not sure you could say that that isn't illegal because they didn't write that.
That's not something a 5-year-old would understand.
The framers didn't write specifically like, and a couple hundred years from now, collaborating with a foreign government on a technology we couldn't have anticipated to hack an opponent's emails. That's not kosher.
That's not kosher. Folks, Blinkist. What is Blinkist? It's like blinks of a book almost, like snapshots. If you have a long list of books you want to read, but you simply don't have the time, Blinkist is the solution for you. It's particularly great for nonfiction books, right? It's the only app that takes thousands of those best-selling nonfiction books, distills them down to the most impactful elements, so you can read or listen to them in under 15 minutes, all on your phone. With Blinkist, you'll expand your knowledge and learn more in just 15 minutes than you can in almost any other way. Plus, you can listen anywhere. The Blinkist library is massive, constantly growing. You can find timeless classics like Think and Grow Rich. As you know, timeless classic.
Timeless.
To current bestsellers like Fire and Fury. Right?
Current classic.
Current classic. Just to give you a notion, okay? So for me, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to listen to the 80-20 principle. This is fascinating to me. Now, and they also have, what's his face? Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week.
80-20 is fascinating.
But the 80-20 principle, and this is, for me, this is the type of book I want to hear about in 15 minutes. I don't need to hear everything else. I don't need to hear the big buildup. That's what these books. It basically says that 80% of results are generated by 20% of your work. And you just got to figure out what the 20% of the work are so that you're getting you cut out the other, cut it out the other 80%, but you just don't, you de-emphasize it. Anyways, you could listen to that in 15 minutes. You get everything you need from that. But
you can 80-20 it.
You could 80-20 it.
It's perfect.
But they also have books like A Brief History of Time. They have Naomi Klein's No Logo. That was the first big, yeah. They have Elizabeth Colbert's book. I can't remember the name of it.
Is it The Great Extinction?
Yes.
Great book. And also No Logo. Everybody should read.
Yep.
That really holds up.
Tried to get Elizabeth Colbert on. Could not get her on. She was one of the few people that could not get on. I don't know why.
She said it was a zero-sum game piece.
But it's something I in my walk to work, I can listen to 2 of these books. Gives you a little sense of how long it takes me to walk to work, folks. Do the math. But I would check out. I would check out the 80/20, or if you haven't, for some reason you haven't read No Logo, start here. Listen to it 15 minutes, then maybe delve into it, or Brief History of Time, any of those. Right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/majority. Start your 7-day free trial. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist. Blinkist.com/majority to start your free 7-day trial. Blinkist.com/majority. Check it out. It'll make you smarter. It will make you smarter. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Annie Lowrey. She's written this book on UBI, but she also just wrote a piece on stock buybacks. So I may indulge, because yesterday I had mentioned this story about the stock buybacks and about, Bill Lazonic, who we've had on this show, 3 or 4 times over the years, who is convinced that so many of our economic problems are tied into sort of 2 basic policies. One, capital gains taxes, where you favor money that is made by money, essentially, and versus money that is made by labor, when you give it preferential treatment in the tax code. And then the idea of tax of stock buybacks, because you've created these cottage industries in the upper levels of these corporations that misalign the agendas of people, or I should say of the people who run corporations and the consumers, I guess, and the workers and the community, and even the long-term health of the corporation. So I should say also rest in peace to Ron Dellums. He was Oakland's mayor for like 30 years, somewhere around there, and then he was in Congress for I think 30 years. I think he was in Congress. Someone like that. And I guess he passed away.
Yesterday, he was 82, and he was known, obviously, on civil rights, but also his anti-Vietnam War activism continued in his work for Congress against weapons systems and on human rights.
Yeah, he was like like one of those liberal lion type of guys.
Barbara Lee has his seat now, right?
I believe so. I believe so. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Annie Lowrey about her book, Give People Money, How Universal Basic Income Would End Poverty, Revolutionize Work, and Remake the World. We'll be right back.
Got some money, but I am afraid, 'cause money makes you lazy. I'm feeling fine, my baby kisses me all of the time. So please, don't take my girl from me. I was hanging ten on a wave of loneliness. I could have died, but I'm alive.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program contributing editor at the Atlantic Monthly or the Atlantic Magazine. I don't know if we call it the Monthly anymore. Annie Lowrey, author of Give People Money, How Universal Basic Income Would End Poverty, Revolutionize Work, and Remake the World. Welcome to the program, Annie.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's go through, and I should also, let me just start also by saying that you wrote a piece the other day about our stock buybacks starving the economy. I have that's sort of a bailiwick of mine, so I want to maybe we get to that after our discussion of universal basic income. But let's start with the lowest hanging fruit in terms of the UBI. Well, actually, even before we get to how it would end poverty, just tell us what it is.
Yeah, so it's a really simple idea. So you basically imagine that the government would give everybody something like a Social Security payment. That's just, like the classic UBI idea. The number that people often talk about is sort of $500 or $1,000 a month. And then there's a lot of common variants. So another idea is that the government would provide something called a guaranteed minimum income. So, the government knows pretty well how much you earn through the tax system. So if you fell below, say, the poverty line or 130% of the poverty line, then they would just boost your income up through tax rebates. So those are the kind of two central ideas that people are usually talking about.
And one is a little bit more universal, obviously, than the other. But I guess, what are the implications of one being more or less universal in those two scenarios?
So it's a good question because it sort of depends on what problem you're trying to solve, right? So say that we have a guaranteed minimum income. That's going to be a really effective way to get families out of poverty. It's basically going to say, there's a floor in this country. We're a really rich society. We're not going to let anybody live on $6,000 a year in cash income. We're just not going to do it. But if it's actually universal and everybody's getting it, so rich, poor, you, me, everyone, that's providing kind of a form of social insurance. It's also going to help do things like boost middle-class wages, provide a kind of wage for people who are not in paid work but are still in important work, so doing things like care work if you're taking care of a kid or an elderly relative or parent. And so, the full-fat UBI is sort of a more radical policy with a lot more policy implications. But if you're looking to just end poverty in the richest society that the planet has ever known, you can do it through this more sort of guaranteed minimum policy.
All right. Well, let's address that. I mean, it obviously ends poverty insofar as, almost definitionally speaking, right? I mean, if you give people the enough money so that they are no longer fall within our definition of poverty, they're no longer in poverty. But what of and I guess maybe we'll work in some of the critiques as we go through these. What of the argument that, so we're going to pay everybody $1,000. Let's go with just the universal one. Everybody's going to get $1,000, and that will take you out of poverty. I guess presumably, if you have 4 people in the family, right, you're going to get $48,000 a year, and that will take you out of poverty. What happens to? Okay, so it's going to put upward pressure on wages. Presumably, it would put upward wages on prices too. No, and would there be like this game of like never catch the rabbit going around the track?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. There are not great studies about UBI itself and inflation. A lot of people have raised this issue. But I think that you can basically, let's forget UBI and let's just imagine that you have a more equitable distribution of income and consumption. So an economy like we had in the late 90s, we had more inflation then, but there are ways to temper inflation, right? Like this is a fiscal policy and you're still going to have monetary policy. And it's probably still a better equilibrium if you just, are still providing more purchasing power to middle income and lower income families. So it's hard for me to to see a world in which it literally all just gets eaten up by inflation. It is possible to see a world in which it gets eaten up by things like rents or rising cost of education or healthcare. So, it's certainly not a silver bullet that like ensures better levels of consumption for everyone, but it does probably help get you there.
Okay. I mean, I can just imagine like, okay, if I own a bodega in a fairly low income area, and I know that all of a sudden every one of my customers now has got an extra $1,000 cash, I don't know what I'm going to do with my prices there. All right, well, let's move on to how it would revolutionize work.
Yeah, so there's kind of two ways that I think about this. So one, and I know that this is obviously something that you talk about on your show in extraordinary depth, but between declining unionization rates in the private sector, between a relatively low minimum wage by historical standards, due to increasing concentration among companies in just huge number of sectors of the economy, you've seen this, declining labor share of income for decades now. And so this is kind of one way to make sure that workers are kind of getting their fair share. If you had $1,000 a month to fall back on, it's unlikely or less likely that you would take a job for $8 an hour that was dangerous, degrading, something you wouldn't otherwise do, right? Like you're not going to find a lot of slaughterhouse workers for $8 an hour if you're also providing them with $1,000. So that's one way. And then another way that it's theorized that this could be a good thing is that, we've known for hundreds of years that GDP and national income and national accounting really only accounts for certain types of work, and that's paid work. But there's a huge amount of unpaid labor that's done primarily by women and often by women of color. That's really important to the economy functioning, right? Like somebody needs to be taking care of babies, somebody needs to be taking care of older people, people who might be sick, people with disabilities. And so this is kind of a way of providing a sort of social wage for that kind of work, because we're coming into this, we have an existing child care crisis that's really just, it's driving women out of the labor force. It's sort of difficult for families all over the income scale, which is kind of an interesting thing, although obviously it's much harder for women who are low income or parents who are low income. And then, we have a coming care crisis, one that's probably in a lot of cases already here in terms of elder care. And so, if that work is socially beneficial, but it's hard to make a living doing it, and it's very hard to pay for in some cases, you can imagine that this is sort of a way of addressing that. It's certainly not the only way to address that. But it would probably provide families, and especially low-income families, with more choice to either stay in the labor market or leave, to pay for care or not, and that could be a really good thing.
So broadly speaking, it empowers labor and empowers people to make choices as to where they actually expend effort and work, broadly speaking, work without having to worry about having the ability to make money at it, I guess.
Yeah, ideally this is a way of providing people with more freedom and more choice. And so, before you were pointing out that there's this kind of technical definition of poverty, right? Like, are you above or below this line? And that's like an important definition, and getting above it is really important. And we know that the simple mathematical fact of getting above it has all sorts of other good beneficial effects on families and kids and people. But, there's this like broader sense in which poverty is about social exclusion. It's about not having choice. And so I think that if you think of this as basically, being a way to provide more choice, more freedom, perhaps even more dignity to people, or at least starting to think about ways to do that. Again, given that we have this amazing, productive, huge economy, but we still have so many folks that are like, wow, I can barely make ends meet, or I'm not making ends meet. But that's the kind of like sort of more powerful philosophical idea that a lot of people have behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I think at one point you referred to it as an ethos. And that's, I mean, that largely that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Like, on the one hand, this is kind of a technocratic policy fix, and in another hand, we could be talking about, well, okay, is this better than an EITC expansion, or is this better than a child credit, or, universal cash payment of some other kind to some other group of people? And that's all well and good. But I also think that it really, the thing that I find so interesting about it is it just forces you to ask yourself what questions policy could answer and why we don't answer them, right? Like what problems we just leave and we say, well, that's just, that's capitalism, that's a free market, that's our society, that's how we are. And it's not even to say, it's funny because I'm, with some of these questions, I'm not even sure UBI is the best way to address them, but it at least begs the question of how things might be different.
Right. And that's what I find interesting about it too. But before we get to Remake the World, as we cover all of your the subtitle, let's just address some of the critiques from the right before we get to the critiques from the left. You give people money, and of course, then you've turned the social safety net into a hammock, haven't you?
Yeah, it's a common critique. It's not one that I think holds much water. There is certainly an amount of money that you could give people that they would stop working. That's absolutely true, right? Like, if we gave everybody $150,000 a year from somewhere and made no other changes and prices stayed constant, like, I think a lot of people would stop working and would just, enjoy themselves, spend time with their families.
Right, and that would be horrible. Right? I mean, can we just even imagine a world where everyone would enjoy themselves and spend time with their family? That would be a horrible thing to have happen.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you on that, and I certainly hope that the robot apocalypse makes it so that none of us really have to work anymore. I think that would be great. But yeah, look, like, yes, a UBI, we have studies of this, and it shows that people stop working. Some, not that many. And the people who reduce their work effort, as the literature puts it, or quit working, are often young people who stay in school for longer. They're the parents of young children, and then they are older folks who choose to retire or step back from work a little bit early. It's hard to convince me that those are bad things.
Right. I mean, that's also, it's an arbitrary definition of what we constitute, what we define as work. Right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
It's quite possible if I'm going and taking care of my elderly parent, or I'm taking care of my young child, I'm doing work. It's just I'm not being paid for it. I'm certainly doing something that's valuable to society, and something that I could pay someone to do. It's just that when I choose to do it, I'm not getting paid.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and it's hard, right? Like, does that mean that you're going to have a lower employment to population ratio and possibly a lower GDP? Yeah, it does. But those are not really they're not whole measures of welfare, right? Like, it's not capturing everything. So I think that that's important. I would also note that the more punitive measures to get people to work, like work requirements, they tend to speed up how fast people get a job. But there's not a lot of evidence that they get people out of poverty. And in fact, people who can't comply with work requirements who get sanctioned end up in really deep poverty. And so, I understand that there's this argument that the government just wants to encourage human flourishing by getting people into the workforce and keeping them there. And I do think that sort of policies that focus more on carrots than sticks, so like the earned income tax credit, have proven really valuable. But I do think that, our conception of work can change. Even our conception of how to measure the health of our economy and our polity can change. And so, again, I don't see a mom of 3 kids or a dad who wants to be with his parent when his parent is dying. It's such a bad thing for them to stop working.
Well, I mean, if you give them $12,000 a year, they're going to want to do that every time one of their parents are dying. And that's going to be, largely that's what it is, right? I mean, the argument ultimately boils down to someone's sense of morality and of what that literally like idle hands are the devil's plaything. I mean, even if we can argue about whether people are actually idle, that's a data point that is probably measurable in some if we had the ability to measure that. But ultimately, it's this sort of it's a moral hazard argument, and it's a very specific sense of morality on some level that people are promoting. And I would also add, we never hear it in the context of like wealthy people's kids.
No, never. Nobody is ever like, you know what? We actually want to we want to tax capital income higher because we want people to be wage earners. We want them to be working in that way instead of receiving passive income. Like I've never heard anybody make that argument. I've never heard anybody say we're going to attach work requirements to the mortgage interest deduction, right? Like this is a way in which, we have Puritan roots, right? And it shows up in policies like this. And, I do. And I think you're also right to gesture to this way in which, like, hopefully in the future we could work less, right? Like that would be great if the economy grew in such a way that we had such wealth that we could actually sort of step back a little, which is, other societies have valorized that, right?
That's the way. I've referenced this before on the show, but I bought a steamer trunk years ago at a yard sale outside of Boston, and there was an article from the Miami Herald from like a futurist in the 40s who was giving a talk, I guess, to a ladies' luncheon or something to that effect, but said the real challenge that we were going to have by the end of the century is going to be what are we going to do with our 4-day work week? Because technology is going to free us all, and we're going to have to the real challenge is going to be figuring out what we do with our downtime. But that's still waiting for that.
If only.
If only. But, all right, so let's talk about the efficacy of just handing people money. And to the extent that we've seen any studies or examples of this around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So low and middle income countries, it's very popular. More than 100 of them have either unconditional cash transfers, so like if you're poor, we just give you money, or conditional ones. The two biggest exemplars of this are the two that sort of started the trend and are pointed to most often, a program called Bolsa Familia and Oportunidades, which are in Mexico and in Brazil. And those are conditional. So basically they say to poor families who are in those countries tend to be a lot poorer than even the poor families here, if you have your kid vaccinated, and if your kid is enrolled in school, then you can receive this transfer money. And so those they work great. They work really well. And we have just study after study after study, both in a low-income country context and in a high-income country context, showing that if you just give people cash, they consume more, which is kind of the idea. But their kind of pattern of consumption doesn't tend to change. So they're not off like gambling and buying alcohol and that kind of thing. They buy more groceries basically. It just, it makes their lives a little bit easier. And especially in low income countries, we don't have evidence that it reduces work effort at all. Because in those cases, you still are, even with the transfer, facing the issue of, how you just get food on the table in a lot of cases. So yeah, just giving people cash works really well. It's not something that we do outside of Social Security here, because there's that, kind of, again, cultural belief that your Social Security payment is yours and you paid for it and the government doesn't have any right to tell you what to do with it. Obviously, that's I think a little bit of a misunderstanding of the accounting. But for something like food stamps, they're very restrictive, right? Like in some places, this is my favorite example about food stamps. In some places, you have to make sure that you're buying domestically produced cheese. So can you imagine you're a parent who's trying to feed your kid with like a food stamp, and you have to look at where the cheese was made because God forbid you don't buy the right cheese. And again, we just have all these kind of restrictive things, and maybe you do have food stamps or SNAP benefits, maybe that helps you out, but you're missing your gas payment, you're about to get your electricity turned off, you really need your car fixed, and so that SNAP payment doesn't necessarily help with those problems. The money would be much more valuable to you if it were fungible.
And we should add too that the value of this is stretches to people who I think are involved in more or less, for lack of a better term, the gig economy, where you ride out ebbs and flows. I mean, I think there's been a significant amount of research that one of the problems with poverty is that your money comes in chunks at times, and there are times of the year where you have no money, and other times of the year where you have a little bit more, but you're just paying off bills. This would sort of, I guess, even things out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It would help provide it'd be kind of like insurance, right? You're never going to be literally without, and that maybe you won't have to, maybe you're not even consuming that much more, but you don't have to make those sudden trade-offs. You don't have to sell your car in order to keep your lights on type thing. And that would be great, because I think that you're right that, lower income families are often having the problem of just not having enough money, but they're also facing the problem of that kind of financial fragility. And, especially if your community or your family is lower income, who you're going to go to if all of a sudden you need, $500 or something. And that's just, a constant problem. And again, it's, on these measures of fragility, they just really haven't gotten better in a long time. Again, just like the economy growing quite a bit.
All right. So let's move. I mean, I have wrestled with my feelings about the UBI for some time, and I'm increasingly becoming a little bit nervous about it. So let's move on to some of the critiques maybe that we would hear from the left a little bit, which is the Remake the World part, because some of the concern is on the left that this will end up, and it was conceived in some circles as a replacement for the social safety net. So you don't have economic stabilizers that kick in, maybe like food stamps. Maybe you do it partially, just when, I don't know, GDP drops or unemployment drops, or whatever. But there's a lot of concern that a program like this is going to replace the social safety net, which it seems to me it's almost like it's, during the Trump administration, this has been a great lesson, it seems to me, about programs that have any sort of regulatory reliance on regulatory agencies to set anything, right? So we can see how Trump is able to basically unwind the ACA with a little tweak here and a little tweak there. In fact, it was a Republican congressman who had to beg Trump to salvage the, I think it was the risk adjustment payments recently. And had he not, the private insurance component of Obamacare, and you combine that with what's happening with the navigators, all stuff that is sort of like below the statutory level is, but much of the program's contingent upon this. It seems to me there's a real danger with a UBI that we're going to be in the same situation. We're going to set it for $1,000 a month today, and then Donald Trump will be president, or Tom Cotton will be president, and he'll say, whoa, my labor department says that actually you only need $850. And then we just, right? I mean, isn't that the biggest concern about a program like this? From the left, I guess?
I mean, so from the left, I think that I share that concern, and I think that there are a couple other good ones. So, yes, if you only have a single lever of policy, then that lever becomes that much more vulnerable, right? At least now, if you're cutting food stamps or hurting the ACA, other policies exist, right? I think that that's a good and a very real concern. And so then, I have some other concerns too. So one is that, depending on what policy you're trying to solve, a UBI is a pretty diffuse policy. So if you're just trying to deal with, wages for the middle class, there might be better ways to tackle that. I also think that there's a way in which a UBI could lead to a reduction in progressivity. if you think like Charles Murray of AEI, who's a libertarian, likes the idea of a UBI, in part because it just cuts the safety net and everybody gets the same thing, where, given our Gini coefficient and everything else, there's a lot of evidence that we actually need more progressive policy. We need more redistribution. A UBI in which everybody's getting the same thing doesn't get you there. So those are all issues. I do think that there are good critiques of this from the left.
And so from, I guess, what is how do you foresee something like this being adopted? I mean, have you sat down and said, here's scenario 1, here's scenario 2, here's scenario 3, and how many of those scenarios are attractive in that regard? I mean, if you are someone who perceives that the problem that we have is not just that we don't provide enough for a basic standard of living for folks, but also that we have this sort of instability that comes from having this radical inequality, and not just inequality in the context of income, but really things like education, things like health.
Yeah.
How many of those scenarios are nerve-wracking if those are your issue sets that you're concerned about?
Yeah. So I think that there's a thin edge of the wedge here, or sort of a tip of the spear, right? So there are smaller scale policies that I think share this ethos that I think are much likelier to become policy that Democrats will focus on, I think, if and when they come back into power. So things like eliminating child poverty through a universal child grant, or even a means-tested child grant, that would be great money for the federal government to spend. That is straightforwardly an investment in the health and education of America's future workers. We have disgusting rates of child poverty in the United States. It's about 22%, whereas Denmark, which is not a richer country than the United States, the rate is 3 or 4%. And so, kids don't vote, right? I'm not sure that's going to get a ton of people to the polls, but that could be a good thing and not crazily expensive, right? Not that I think that we need to worry too much about paying for things, but it's a more marginal policy. Things like expanding the earned income tax credit, which would be great for the middle class, along with supportive policies like raising the minimum wage, requiring employers to provide leave, that would be really, really good. And I do think that you're just seeing a lot more blue sky thinking on the left, obviously, right, from Bernie folks, from people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and also, from the sort of more centrist Democratic politicians that are really rushing to the left, so the Cory Bookers of the world. And so I think that the Overton window is really expanding. The policy that I'm actually most enamored of, and I really wish that somebody would take up, and I love drawing attention to, comes from 3 researchers at the University of Michigan that show with something called a negative income tax, which basically you just give people more money depending on how poor they are. It's kind of a complicated mechanism, but it's an easy sort of idea. We could actually eliminate poverty in the country with no more than we spend on current anti-poverty policies. So this could just become more effective. Even if we just wanted to add that on to other things, it would only cost about $200 billion a year, which, yes, is a lot of money, but compared to the Trump tax cuts, we just
added $70 billion a year in our defense budget, and I don't know if I'm exaggerating, but if there were more than 24 articles written about it, or if anybody wrote about it for more than a week, to add that $70 billion, and the idea that 2.5 times that would get rid of poverty is pretty stunning. Right, we just did that. It's 70 crazy, billion. Right? Like there was more controversy over, I don't know, somebody getting pulled from a soccer game than that $70 billion.
Yeah, exactly. As you point out, the government has a lot of space to spend. It's not a crazy thing to think about. And I think it just points to the fact that there's not political will for this, but I'm hoping that there will be. And that, as people increasingly get fed up and say, hey, we've had, another 9-year recovery, and it's still not feeling better for me, that maybe there is just more space for this kind of thing.
All right, let's turn our attention for a moment to this idea of stock buybacks.
Yes.
I've on this program, had the opportunity to talk to Bill Lazonick, who's a professor at UMass, a couple of times over the years, about two things that he basically, I think he thinks that have led to an enormous amount of wealth inequality in this country. And that is the reduction in the capital gains tax. And this is on a day where apparently Larry Kudlow has the idea that the administration is going to change the cost basis of involved in the calculation of capital gains tax to effectively lower the taxes paid by wealthy people on the money that derives from their money. But Lazonick says the stock buybacks coupled with the capital gains and the subsequent increase in compensation in the form of stock options to basically C-suite folks and board of directors accounts for a lot of problems that we have in terms of wealth inequality and job loss and whatnot. How is it that we basically allow stock manipulation to be legal?
Yeah, so we didn't for a long time. This was discouraged through regulatory policies, not outright banned until 1982. And that's when it kind of took off. And so, for folks who might not be as familiar, the idea is that a company would take profits or, cash reserves or even take a loan, issue debt to purchase its own shares, which inflates the value of those shares. There's a lot of arguments that a better way to return money to shareholders, which is something that companies absolutely do, is through dividends, which is basically where you just kind of issue cash back to the people who own the shares instead of buying the shares. And so, this has all sorts of distortive effects on valuation, corporate valuation. It was barred because it was seen as manipulating the stock market. And it's kind of, short-term juice, right? You're just giving a little bit of a bump to people who can then go sell their shares or just continue to hold them or trade them. I think that there's some evidence that this has led to a decrease in corporate investment and thus to companies taking cash and just getting their shareholders richer instead of becoming more innovative or more efficient. And then, there's this issue that here companies have made this argument that they can't pay workers more, but they clearly can, and they just don't have to. There isn't enough competition between, rising corporate concentration, things like the minimum wage and leave policies. It's just workers are cheap. And, so I think that you've just seen this extraordinary skew in the economy, which, again, I know it's something you talk about a lot. This kind of inequality is something that the founders were terrified of. We have tons of evidence that it's both bad for the economy and bad for democracy. And we have all sorts of ways to ameliorate it without totally soaking the rich, right? Without, taking, we're not talking about like confiscatory policies here. We're just asking companies to provide dividends instead of stock buybacks, which is what they normally do, and many of them still do.
I want to add that I am for confiscatory policies, but that aside, I mean, it's I think on some level it's even narrower than shareholders. I mean, here's this piece from Politico the other day. The Oracle Corporation CEO sold $250 million worth of shares in her company. The product development head sold $85 million. The sales came after the company announced a $12 billion share repurchase, right? So their stock values pop, and a dozen people at the company, maybe 15, the board of directors, I'm sure, they sell their stocks. Like their interests are so misaligned from the long-term health of the company, the fate of their workers, the communities they work in. They're running a cottage industry. It's like sitting down at the table and a guy playing poker, and it's really all about the side bets that are driving every single thing. You know, it's why they make betting against, baseball if you're playing illegal, because these guys don't have the same interests as what we traditionally assumed a corporation has.
Yeah, exactly. And I do. It's just this hard thing. I do worry that even putting the worker issue aside, if we've seen this dramatic decline in corporate investment and we feel like productivity is low, what is that doing to corporate dynamism? What is that doing to the broader economy, even leaving the questions of inequity and inequality aside? I agree that I just think that the amount of help that is going to the holders of capital, the amount of benefit versus the amount of benefit and encouragement of financial stability and growth among lower income families, is just really stark. And that's I say that even as the government does do a lot of redistribution and does have a lot of policies, it's just not keeping up with the tide here, right? It's like the things are working at odds.
Absolutely. Well, the book is Give People Money, How a Universal Basic Income Would End Poverty, Revolutionize Work, and Remake the World. Annie Lowrey, we'll put a link to that at majority.fm. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. Thus concludes the first half of our program. Just a reminder, you can support the first half of the program by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. And when you become a member, you not only support the first half of the program, we give you an entire second half of the program. In fact, I'm not going to get all mathy with you. I know for some people who listen to this program, math is difficult, but I'm going to throw around a couple of fractions. Okay?
I thought it was we that were opposed to math and the listenership was passionately in favor of it.
I've been practicing my fractions.
I hope everyone took their Ritalin today.
I've been practicing my fractions. And
you're killing our core
I can
brand
tell you
dude.
that if the entire show was 10, 6/10 of that show would actually be the fun half. 4/10 of that show is the free half. So we call them halves, but the fact of the matter is that when you're just listening to the free show, you're not even getting a half. You're getting less than half.
You should call it the fun 6/10.
Fun size.
Or 5/8, as the case may be.
That's exactly right, but that does not roll off the tongue. So we still say fun half, but people should know it's really the fun 6/10 or 3/5.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
9/15.
You have been practicing your fractions.
I've been practicing my fractions.
I'm just so grossed out by the math talk.
There you go.
We made a very clear decision, I believe about 2 years ago, that we were opposed to math. We wanted to eliminate it in the curriculum. We wanted the country to be just sort of numbers illiterate.
Over the weekend, I was boning up on my fractions.
Very disappointing.
Yeah, I apologize. Folks, join themajorityreport.com. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. You can get organic. I think it's all organic. Is it?
It's my understanding.
You can get the Majority Report blend there. And with the coupon code Majority, you get 10% off. So check it out. Folks, today is Tuesday. Tomorrow, I will be headed to New Orleans, Louisiana for Netroots Nation.
You aren't from around here, are you, boy?
Well, I mean, it's not like nobody goes to New Orleans.
No, I know. That's why it's so funny. It's like Sam just ends up like on the set of True Detective.
I'm
leaving conservatory taxes.
The last time I was in New Orleans, maybe this is more of a fun half story.
Ooh.
But
become a member today. Majority.fm/become a member. Find out what happened.
That's right.
Sam's
I'm gonna wait.
sojourn.
I'm gonna do it right
That's
on
what
the
I'm
other
saying.
side.
Yeah. See you on the flip side.
Yeah, it is. Whoa. But I'm going to New Orleans for Netroots Nation. I will be broadcasting live in there. We're going to pipe it into the studio on Thursday and Friday. Today is Tuesday. Tonight is Tuesday night. On Tuesday nights, the Michael Brooks show happens almost like 3 feet from where I'm sitting.
Right.
And right there.
Wait, what more math?
What's that? 3 feet?
Problem. Stop with the
3
numbers.
feet is not math.
Math enough. It's math.
How many inches are in 3 feet?
It's math adjacent.
36 inches
That's
from
math.
where I'm at.
Boo. Stop it.
Someone's been helping a middle schooler with her homework.
Yeah.
1 yard away
going
from
on?
me.
The
Michael Brooks show
Koch
happened.
brothers have not been able to break into this office and delete the recording of Anna Kasparian and I's ruthless roasting of Dave Rubin. Well, actually, I was going to say I felt bad for him. I never did. It's really fun. And then Bree Joy, crew, regular, she's in. We're talking about Sorry to Bother You. We're talking about this. She just was campaigning or at a campaign with Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez in Kansas. Some lessons about that for the midterms in 2020. And then I do want to keep kind of giving hints of these illicit histories on Sunday for patrons. Milton Alamati and I are talking about the origins of the Congo Civil War, going back to the coup against Lumumba and the role of our iPhones in it.
And Jamie, the Antifada.
Yeah, so we just recorded a new episode last night with our friend Brandon Jordan, who travels around the world making documentaries about global uprisings. Pretty cool. And it really gets into a lot of talk about right-wing populism, anti-fascist movements, why you can only fight the far right with the far left, et cetera, et cetera. Also, we have a new YouTube channel up it's called The Antifada Podcast. You know what? I might even put a link to it in the blog post today because the link is too long for me to say right now. And it's got most of our recent episodes. We're working on getting all the old ones up there, and also a trailer for our first patron reward video, Acid Kitchen.
Wait, what the heck is going on here?
Jesus.
Wait,
Wow.
look at Matt. This is a rare Matt comes
Let me also... well, wait, really quick. Oh, I forgot to say, patreon.com/TMBS. Now, Matt, please go ahead.
Hold on for 1 second. I will say this, Jamie. Get a URL and then forward it to your YouTube channel. It's a little digital tip.
Oh, man.
All right. And to folks, as you know, Brendan is working the board today. So we have a special guest on the...
free float.
On the...
Plains zone defense.
Yeah, Plains... Yeah, you got to speak into the microphone.
Oh, am I up? Yeah, patreon.com/literary hangover. Talking about Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Fucking Hawthorne,
yeah.
dude.
There you go.
Short and sweet.
Thumbs up. Wow.
Hawthorne, capitalism, fucking weed.
All right, quick break. Head into the fun half. 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920. See you there. they weren't really called for. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fun half of the program. Check 1, 2. Is my mic up? Is it? All right, there we go. Folks, it's the fun half, and wherein I will read some IMs, I will take your phone calls, I will play some sounds, and all of that will happen within the context of this program, ladies and gentlemen. Here is, now look, there's been a lot of times where we say like, oh, look at this comedy bit, I put in quotes, that Jesse Waters did. That is such a racist bit, okay? But look, there are times, I'm sure, if I wanted to be super generous and totally naive and eliminate everything else I know about Jesse Waters, where I would say, it's just really dumb comedy that, like, a 7th grade kid from maybe a different era would find funny. Maybe I was that guy. Like it's very possible in 7th grade I was like, oh my God, people from China don't talk like they don't speak English, and I thought that was hilarious. So, you could see a Jesse Waters bit and maybe come to the wrong conclusion that this guy thinks that if someone's not white or doesn't speak English, or I should say not white and doesn't speak English, or just not white, that maybe they're just automatically, it's like a synonym for someone being stupid, right? Or less than. You could get that impression. Or you could just get that impression in the course of him just talking on national TV about somebody. Here is the 5.
Said, who's the wall?
He's the wall.
The wall was always a visual metaphor about an enhanced border security. He's made it an issue. People are listening. He's made it the issue that people weren't talking about. Maybe he'll get something out of it.
Maybe he'll get something out of it.
Yeah,
well, I think his strategy is I'm going to go after immigrants. This weekend he was
illegal immigrants.
No, he wants to cut legal immigration. Don't forget that.
He wants chain over, lotto over. He wants merit based.
Yeah, and he wants to cut legal. So I'm saying
would
go after the
legal immigration by bringing in the best and the brightest.
Oh, please.
Because we don't bring in some guy's uncle from Zimbabwe.
Oh yeah. Oh, Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Or
and then,
Thailand.
I get it. I want Norway. But the other part of it is
no way to Norway.
Yeah, you don't want to bring in some guy's uncle from Zimbabwe because he's from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is the name of an African country. And either Jesse Waters believes that uncles are inherently problematic, or maybe it has something to do with Zimbabwe.
You know what I have to say, though, just to credit where credit is due? Greg Gutfeld really saved that segment by his really humorous interjection there.
Norway is no way?
Yeah, I thought he saw that Waters had crossed the line to overt racism, and he was like, whoa, I need to save this segment. And he did it in a classic, very funny, very poised fashion.
Now,
well done.
We should also add that Jesse Waters doesn't know what he's talking about. They clearly want to cut the number of immigrants. It's not just they want to get the quality ones, like not the ones from Zimbabwe. But they actually want to cut the number of immigrants. They want to cut the number of refugees that are allowed in this country. They have cut the number of people who are allowed to be in this country after I guess you'd call them refugees under the TSP program, where, there was a major earthquake in this country and they can't recover, or there was a civil war and things are still bad there. So Jesse Waters, nothing like being racist and dumb.
They want to ethnically cleanse the country and engineer the electorate. And even if Jesse Waters was smart enough to understand it, he still would support it because he's as immoral as he is stupid. Zimbabwe is also known, and I even hesitate to bring this up because in some ways it shouldn't matter, but Zimbabwe is actually known for a very high quality education system on the continent. And a lot of people who immigrate from Zimbabwe, certainly Nigeria as an example, are actually disproportionately credentialed and educated.
Yeah.
But whatever, not like that should matter.
The real
frankly.
problem is
not like that should matter, frankly.
Right.
Yeah,
I
you
hate
think
that.
he knows that?
I think he does not know that, which is why I enjoy saying it. But I also would say that people who have no education and no traditional skill set should also be able to come here.
Well, but they're less than, though, Mike.
Right.
They're less than. All right. So in regards to New Orleans, so here's my New Orleans story. The last time I was there was 30 years ago, maybe 32 years ago, and I ingested some hallucinogenic mushrooms. I'm not going to imply that I did that on purpose. I'm going to just leave it out.
You're not from around here, are you, boy?
Well,
I'm from everywhere. I'm one with the cosmos.
Try our local specialty.
I think it was like somewhere around between 3 and 4 grams of mushrooms, which was a little bit more than I think was probably appropriate for me to take at that time.
I am impressed.
And I spent an entire evening in New Orleans walking around one neighborhood and vomiting almost at the same place as I went around each time. And it didn't seem to bother me. I would walk the block, vomit, walk the block, vomit, walk the block, vomit. People would be like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm loving it." And I just couldn't do anything except for take left turns. And so I just went around one block over and over again. It was a nice little block. I don't know where. It was near Tulane. I have no idea where it was. I went to go visit my buddy Charlie. And that was my New Orleans experience.
That's pretty similar to some of my New Orleans stories, actually.
I don't find that hard to believe.
I was vomiting while shooting fireworks at my friends.
There you go. Yeah, even under the influence of hallucinogens, I know I will be very careful with pyrotechnics. I will never do something like that.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Calling from a 908 area code 90879. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is a young man racist.
Young man racist. Hello.
Hey, I just got done reading the Wikipedia page to that book. Was it Bell Loop or some shit?
All right. Yeah. You gotta be good. You gotta be good.
I just thought I was just ready to finally debate the legendary Sammy Siege. Just go tit for tat.
All right. Well, let's go. You got to bring it. If this is real, you definitely got to bring it. If it's comedy bit, you got it too. So let's do this.
All right. I'm not gonna lie to you, Sam. I didn't really think this bit through much past this point.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, and
sometimes you have a good name for a character, and that's just basically
here's the
where
thing.
it's at.
When you do that, you got the good name. You just go, "Hi, this is Young Man Racist. I would like to debate you." I'm obviously joking, and then you just move on with your point, and then we would, there is an algorithm between what you got and how long it takes to express it, and so if you got just a little bit, do it quick, get through it, and then you get the credit.
Also, remember, Sam is much less forgiving with callers like you than actual demented
If you were
racists.
genuinely young man racist, this would be very different phone call.
Excited.
I would
be
be sending you.
Pray tell.
I would be sending you a muffin basket right now.
Well, I also just want to say to my dad, old man racist, that me and Mom want you to come home. And
that's good.
That's not bad at all.
All right, what else you got?
You got to have a little more quiver if you really there's got to be at least a hint of the it's a review of the Executive Journal of Phrenology in 2002 that totally debunked the woman you cited.
No, it's I'm just young. I'm young man racist, so I'm trying to make conservatism is the new punk rock, and I'm trying to do that thing, but
all right.
It's not really working out for me. I guess.
All right. Well, so what else you got? Anything? What? Go ahead.
Yeah, just Central Jersey DSA is going to be protesting a company that helps out ICE and doing things that we don't really appreciate, such as jailing little kids. So we'll be at the White House Station parking lot by the Starbucks. Bring your friends.
When is that? When's that happening? Where can people get more information on that?
Today, you can check out the Central Jersey DSA Facebook page. It will be in White House Station today at 5:30. I'm kind of scared because, it's suburban folk, and they're kind of like a little bit antisocial, and they're a bit like ornery, and it's like the real Trump territory out here. So hopefully, I won't have to get into a scuffle with some suburban folk. But who can say?
Good luck. I'm with you on that. It's the suburban guys. Whenever I think of whenever I get anxiety about getting beat up, it is from my youth. It is always like the guys who come in from I don't know, outside the 128 ring, or it's all New Jersey. I don't know.
Central New Jersey is an interesting little part of the state. They got a serious zero-sum reaction going on there. They really do, though.
I'm not surprised to hear that at all. I feel like that there is something about Central New Jersey and Massachusetts that are very similar. Calling from a 908 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, this is me, Jordan Peterson.
Oh, boy.
I just wanted to say that on last call, the caller mocked the well-respected science of phrenology. I just want to say I've spent 20 years studying skull sizes, and let me tell you that the Aboriginal Australians and the Negroid species have a lot more in common with the Australopithecus than the average white man.
All right.
This reminds me of when the Gorka impression was all the rage. And not only did people bombard us with calls, but I remember after the show was over at the Bell House, literally coming out and just what visually looked at me just like a sea of young men approaching me like, Michael, It's like, oh my God. This impression needs to stop.
Before I end this call, I just wanted to ask Michael if he could do his Tony Soprano impersonation.
Sure.
All
right,
what's
thank
the
you.
context?
Dance, monkey, dance.
Yeah, what do you don't even have?
Thank you for the call.
You gotta mention the Bada Bing somehow, and I don't know.
Ice takes. Here's your scene, Michael.
Okay, go ahead. All right, give me a scene.
Ice picked up your workers at the Bing, and you got to talk to some guys about getting them back.
Brendan's taking his improv classes.
I like that. It's like, so Christopher was like, Tone, I understand people are here illegally, but it seems kind of fucking wrong, right? He was here yesterday, and now he's gone. You have to have your fucking paperwork, Christopher. I told him from the beginning, you need to have your fucking paperwork. And then he would go to his therapist. That was the thing it would be kind of like the gay story arc. When the guy comes out as gay in the crew and he goes to his therapist and he's just like, a part of me says, hey, live and let live. But like that Senator Sanatorium says, if we let this go, pretty soon we'll be fucking dogs.
Slippery slope. All right, one more call. Calling from 919 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Joe from Raleigh.
Joe from Raleigh. What's on your mind?
Two things. One is I thought she did a good. Your guest Andy Lowrey did a good job, except the whole thing leaves me a little bit dry. What is? Everything's so technocratic about what she's talking about. What you're left with is a guaranteed payment that creates no solidarity, and I think the key problem with that is that if you have no solidarity behind whatever public policy you're advancing, it's all the support for it is going to melt away over time. And the second point is that to the extent that this economic solution she's proposing helps corporations, well, I don't want to use bad language, but I don't give a fuck about corporations. What I care about is an economy that actually supports human beings and allows them to do whatever it is that they want to do with their lives. So that's my first point. The second point is I think the People's Policy Project did a fantastic job yesterday on turning that Mercatus Center policy study against itself. Maybe it's because I follow more left-wing people, but I've seen more coverage of it from
it sank their site. It broke their server yesterday. That piece.
They broke the internet.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was.
And I used to work. I mean, I'd called before. I've called before, and I used to work at IHS and Mercatus and know these people, and I'm sure that they were freaking out yesterday over that. So, very happy to see that, and I think more strategic marketing and branding approaches by the left is really going to. I mean, it's really impressive. So
yeah, something like that is huge. I appreciate the call. I mean, to be able to take that and jujitsu that is pretty impressive and helpful. Super, super helpful. Vispa, any thoughts on Trump dissing the Koch brothers? Thoughts on Russia stating they know U.S. military moves before they're made? Also, Michael, I hate math too. Left is best.
Nice.
Yeah, this is Trump tweeting out about the Koch brothers. And the Koch brothers, they announced that they're going to stay out of the Heidi Heitkamp race. In part because Heidi Heitkamp voted for basically the degradation of the Dodd-Frank law. And we will all pay for that 10 years from now, maybe 7, maybe 5. We'll pay for that at one point. But the Koch brothers have also announced that they would support Democrats who support their policies, which, of course, they've done from day one. They gave money to Bill Clinton back in the DLC days. They gave money to Andrew Cuomo, 5 or 6 years ago?
2011.
And 7 years ago. And so they do this. They're just being a little bit more prominent about it today and announcing it today because of the nature of Trumpian politics. And here is Trump. Now, look, and this is actually, here's what Trump had to say. The globalist Koch brothers. The globalist Koch brothers. First of all, has he said use globalist in the past?
Of course.
He did during the campaign, I think. But I noticed that we didn't pull it. I don't even know if it was an interview, but I think a couple weeks ago, Bannon said something like the Kochs need to shut up or get with the program.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm thinking, I read this as they're talking again.
Oh, I think he's been talking to Bannon the whole time.
I
think you've been talking to Bannon the whole time.
Gabe Sherman piece out today about how Bannon's working on the 2020 campaign.
That makes sense.
Oh, sure.
And also, in addition to that, I would say it's a symmetry because the Kochs do this every couple of months. Like, we want prison reform. We don't got a problem with homos.
Right. This is great for the Koch brand too.
Yes.
Right? I mean, everybody wins. The globalist Koch brothers, who have become a total joke in real Republican circles. Yeah, I will remind you that the Koch brothers set up an entire campaign apparatus that dwarfed the Republican one. The Republican, like the RNC had something like, I don't know, a dozen people working there, and the Koch brothers had 400 people working on their operation. Those numbers are exaggerated, but that was the point, that their voter files are actually better than the party's voter files. In real Republican circles are against strong borders and powerful trade. I don't know what that means, but I never powerful trade.
You wouldn't.
I never sought their support because I don't need their money or bad ideas. They love my tax and regulation cuts, judicial picks, and more. I made them richer. Their network is highly overrated. I have beaten them at every turn. They want to protect their companies outside the U.S. from being taxed. I'm for America first and the American worker, a puppet for no one. Not even Russia. He didn't put that, but that would have been. Two nice guys with bad ideas. Make America great again. I mean, this is, I would be surprised if he even wrote that. I feel like that's that is a campaign
very cuckish
and
tweet.
it's great for everybody. They're all excited. They all get to pretend.
It's all great brand symmetry, and this is the core. This reminds me of in a certain way echoed Paul Ryan in the summer of 2016, being like, "Don't worry about what this guy's saying on the trail. If he gets in there, we're gonna do everything we've been promising," and that's exactly what happened.
Zimbabwe uncle. Hello, Sam. This is your uncle Mafaro in Harare. I very much Harare. I very much enjoyed. I very much enjoyed listening to your pod show at the Internet Cafe today. Please write to me soon as America begins giving out free money so your aunt and 6 cousins and I can immigrate to New York City and acquire a modest 4-bedroom condo on the Upper West Side. Good evening. Peter Jordan's son. Hi, guys. Quick question. What is actually preventing Trump from firing Mueller? He seems to be pretty good at steering the focus away from all the scandals he's creating depressing thought, but I'm pretty sure he would get no backlash if he did so. The day after, we would probably then focus on another porn star he paid in the past. He technically can't fire Mueller. I mean, he could, I guess, but really he needs to, it needs to be Mueller's direct boss at the DOJ. He could fire that person and install someone who would replace him, get rid of Rod Rosenstein. But I think he's afraid of Republicans, of it causing him a loss of support.
Rod, you and I both knew this day would come.
Zaid Links. Medicare has premiums both for supplemental, which isn't required, but it's pretty much necessary for drug plans, which are required. Medicare patients do get multiple bills. 94-year-old dad lives with me, and he had some health issues this year. Better than private insurance, but still not complication-free. Part of that, I think, is because of the integration with the supplemental stuff. I think it would be much easier under one larger system because you wouldn't have to tier it that way. One more, Nick. Okay, I'm going to try and guess everyone's height. Matt is 6'1", Sam is 6, Brendan is 6, Jamie is 5'7", and Michael is 5'8". Matt, what are you? Matt, you're like 6'2".
He just holds up to
6'2". I am 6 feet. I mean, with my shoes on.
You're 6 feet, right?
Yeah. Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 5'11" 3/4, I think, in barefoot, but yeah, 6 feet. I'm a Jewish 6 feet. You're 5'8".
I'm 5'10".
Jamie?
I realize I have a big personality, but I am actually 5'4".
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I find that surprising. I would have guessed 5'7", and I see you every day. Angel, Matt is just too effing adorable. Wow.
Get this guy on camera more.
Blank OFTP. Folks, that will happen soon. OFTP? I actually have the PVC piping. I painted it black, and I just got to bring it in.
Nice.
The type of organizing is extremely difficult. Any and all help getting the word out is helpful. It's going to be great. National Prison Strike. There's a National Prison Strike 2018. Prisoners have called for a nationwide strike and protest from August 21st to September 9th. You can go to supportresistance.noblogs.org. National Prison Strike 2018. I'm going to send you that, Jamie.
Yeah, definitely. These have been going on for a while
They
in
do
waves.
I think they've been doing. I think they had a strike this time last year as well. That was extended for like 2 or 3 months. I think, if I'm not mistaken, came from a prison started in Georgia, I think, or I want to say Alabama, somewhere down.
And they really need help getting the word out too, because they're very isolated in prison.
Ellie. Canadians have a tendency to act smug, as though we are above the problems of the U.S. It's supported by the media and the attitudes of visiting celebrities. Nice to be in the civilized world. There's a complacency, and currently Premier Doug Ford, brother of deceased crack smoker Rob Ford, is meeting with the Conservative Provincial Parliament in an attempt to slash City Hall in half, effectively severing Toronto democracy to further Conservative agenda. Canada is not a magic utopia. Got that right. Rob from Austin texts, only taking left turns on a hallucinogen is a real zero-sum game. I want a muffin basket. Blueberry muffins. Young good man, Chris. This is the correct joke name, young racist. Please join me for my alt-right book study podcast. All right. I'm not going to do... You can't do 12 different names. I know what you're doing. Nick from Manitoba. Sam, you aren't you precluding the possibility that Jesse Waters did a Seinfeld-style joke deconstruction before the segment and found Zimbabwe was the funniest sounding country name? And then again, it was in case my mind shows Lake Titicaca.
What?
Jamie and Prin, right before we smashed civilizations, we set up indoor self-sufficient toilets across the earth that can function as monoliths.
Still no deal. Sorry.
What is going on?
I have no idea what's going on.
This one person really seems to want to get me on board with anarcho-primitivism.
Some gizmo. Now that the Koch brothers are at war with Trump, will you welcome Dave Rubin with open hands to the resistance? It's going to be interesting to see where he goes with that.
Yeah, I just think he's not being really civil or constructive.
Right.
Yeah, you got that right, you friggin' homo. The whole talking points have been changed.
Attorney Andrew, a follow-up to the study finding $2 trillion savings if we were to transition to Medicare for all by 2022. First, a way to frame this for the people who care about pay for is we should say right now we're paying more for health care just so that someone can make a profit and leaving tens of millions uninsured, many more underinsured. Second, at our current spending levels, we have $2 trillion we could use to erase poverty, provide free college, create universal pre-K, have a Green New Deal and actually be proud of it. Also, your friend Mark Maron may be in the new Joker movie. What do you think he should play? What is the new Joker movie?
I don't know.
Jesus. Maron is really, there's nothing that's more disturbing to me that he
You
will
want to
have
know
an
where I
acting
got
career.
all these stamps?
Who's your guy, Batman? Who's your guy?
Too soon.
Really painful to see this guy have an acting career, I gotta say. Honestly. I don't mind the podcast success or the other, TV, but to have this guy have a film acting career, that is just
A film acting career. I
too
like how you even said it even more properly when you like a film acting career.
It's really It's really problematic. Folks, this is pretty exciting stuff. So, as you will recall, the initiative by Bill Gates to impose their corporate reform agenda on schools. They may have done it with the best of intentions, but they spent over $700 million in some targeted areas on basically creating these experiments to see if high-stakes testing and what they call teacher added value would be a good way to get better outcomes in education. And after many years, and it's not just their $720 million, that became a whole burgeoning movement. And it infected the Democratic Party. It was a big part of Arnie Duncan and all the Chicago folks, this corporate education reform movement. And very quietly, maybe a month ago, the Rand Corporation, which was hired to do a self-evaluation of this program, came out with their findings. I think the Gates people knew that it was coming before then. That found that none of their stuff worked. None of their stuff worked. And in fact, I think in the Rand Corporation report, there was some acknowledgement that maybe, what we need to do is instead of doing high stakes, we need to look at the other factors surrounding the student. In other words, education and schools are not capable, broadly speaking, to intervene with problems that exist outside of schools, whether that is the kids are living in poverty, whether they're malnourished, whether their parents are not, they don't get enough exposure to their parents, etc. They're living maybe in dealing with violence. They're not, all of it. So, fortunately, we have some really great basketball players in the country. Like, I mean, this is a great story. It's also a sad story because there should not be an opportunity for LeBron James to do what he's doing. It's great that he's doing it. It's just that we should live in a society where it should not be necessary. He should be able to, expend his funds on something that's even more, idiosyncratic than actually helping create a good school. And mind you, he is not going in and imposing his notion of what being an educator is onto this school. It is a public school. It is not a charter school.
You mean he's not an educational entrepreneur?
He's not an educational entrepreneur. He's not trying to be, and he's not thinking just because I've made a ton of cash and I'm a great basketball player that I know better than educators. So the LeBron James Family Foundation approached the Akron, Ohio School Board about assisting in the creation of a school designed to help at-risk kids who are lagging behind in their studies and struggling at home. It is a joint venture, but the school board oversees the creation of the curriculum. It ensured that the school would meet educational standards. It dealt with everything that you could say is like sort of like when we think of school, is school. But it operates at a longer than normal school year, has a focus on accelerated learning, and there is a focus on combating factors outside of the classroom that would cause children to struggle. In other words, he is giving support. He's doing exactly like what someone like this should do. Now, again, this is something that we shouldn't have to do. But he's providing services for students to deal with stress related to parents who are struggling to make ends meet. There are activities to prevent kids from having too much idle time, so extracurricular activities. They provide services to families, which include job placement assistance for the parents. They have an on-site food bank that will allow parents to pick out foods that they can prepare at home. I mean, these are addressing all of the societal ills that contribute to poor educational outcomes. It's also giving every student a bicycle so that they have more independence. Here is LeBron James speaking about that school right now.
This is a huge moment, not only in my life, not only in my family's life, not only in the foundation's life, but for these kids and for the whole city of Akron, and more importantly, this is a huge moment for all of us. So we should all give ourselves a round of applause as well.
Good for him. Meanwhile, let's go to, maybe we'll come back to him talking about Trump a little bit later, but this is too funny. So you know this dude, Owen Benjamin? He is no relation to John Benjamin.
He's actually, he's my new favorite person.
Well, let's...
The one who couldn't keep his hands to himself at the casino.
Is that right?
That guy.
Oh, yes. This is the guy who...
we don't know 100.
Who
allegedly.
According to
but I
a
believe
caller, smacked a guy at the Foxwoods Casino performance.
And this
or was it Mohegan Sun?
I thought it was Mohegan Sun, which sounds funnier. And maybe this clip, which is a great clip, maybe though it could give you some insight into his fragile state of mind and why, if the alleged incident happened, he might be reacting.
That's right. And so Owen Benjamin, well, you know what? We're going to start with this one. So Owen Benjamin did a video for Prager University where he's explaining that comedy is a precious thing and that black people being sensitive about being black is really, really harming comedy. And we all know the famous saying, first they came for the comedians and I said nothing. Then they came for the cabaret actors and I said nothing. Then they came for the professional dancers. I mean, it goes on and on. You understand what I'm saying. But here he is at Prager University, the wholly subsidized libertarian project, espousing the need to have more, espousing the need for black people to have more understanding about white comedians. And our buddy Nathan Bernard, right? Oh, this isn't the edit? Oh, I thought that's what it was. All right, well, let's watch the Prager University, but then let's come up with the edited version.
3 white men walk into a bar. You're a racist. Is that a joke? In today's hypersensitive world, it's hard to know what's funny anymore. And as someone who makes his living as a comedian, that's a big problem. Ask Jerry Seinfeld. He's announced he won't play college campuses. He doesn't want to deal with all the political correctness.
Pause it.
And he's not exactly.
Jerry Seinfeld didn't play colleges.
Do college kids even like Jerry Seinfeld these days?
You know what happens when Jerry Seinfeld shows up there? They go, "Who's that old dude?" You know who else is not playing college campuses anymore? Bob Hope. He also stopped playing college campuses.
Burn.
Good.
Edgy. Comedy is important. Why? Because it's a pressure valve that allows us to discuss uncomfortable truths in a friendly way. Laughs are better than punches. But identity
pause it for 1 second. So in other words, it allows, I'm sure Owen Benjamin is really dealing with some uncomfortable truths about himself. Or about people like him. It's just like, it allows me to say things that are uncomfortable for you and have fun with it, but you're ruining it by not having fun with it.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's talking about hitting someone.
That is also sort of interesting, too.
We can do this the comedy way or the assault at Mohegan Sun way.
Let's go.
Politics is killing the gag. How many times have you heard someone say something like this? You're not black, so you don't know what it's like to be me. You're a man, so you can't have an opinion about any issues affecting women. As a left-handed pansexual.
Pause it. How many times have you heard someone say, you're a man, you can't have an opinion about any issues affecting women? Now, I have to say, I run in fairly what he would call identity politic-y circles.
SJW
circles. And I have to say, I have never heard anyone say that to me. Continue.
As a left-handed pansexual leprechaun, only I really know about elevator safety. Comedy only works when we agree on certain realities.
I don't know what that is, except for the guy apparently is taking an elevator to hell. Is that what that was about?
No idea.
All right.
Comedy only works when we agree on certain realities. Take this joke. Why do you always go fishing with at least 2 Baptists? Because if you only take one, he'll drink all your beer. The reason this gets a laugh is because most of us recognize that many religious people are a little more religious around other religious people. That hypocrisy is funny because everyone can relate to it on some level.
Pause it for 1 second. Wait a second.
I think
was that joke actually supposed to be funny? Or is there going to be some type of reveal where he goes, see, that joke wasn't really funny?
No.
I'm going to say no.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no, that's genuine.
Wait, go back. I need to hear this joke again.
The whole joke?
No, the 2 Baptists are in a 3 Baptists are fishing.
I know you're friends with a lot of really funny people, but some comedians are just bad.
Well, I'm not. Believe me.
You're so incredulous that anyone could be this bad.
Why do you always go fishing with at least 2 Baptists? Because if you only take one, he'll drink all your beer. The reason this gets a laugh is because
I get it. People are pretending that they're religious only.
That's because the other guy.
But
is there some type of Baptist edict that you're not supposed to drink alcohol?
Well, Baptists are known to be low IQ morons, and that's not politically correct to say. But I will say it because I'm an honest
But wait a second.
interlocutor.
Are they anti-alcohol?
Only around other Baptists.
Around
Oh,
other
is that
Baptists.
right? Oh, okay.
There's
okay.
a 2 beer per 2-person rule.
Okay. All right.
Most of us recognize that many religious people are a little more religious around other religious people. That hypocrisy is funny because everyone can relate to it on some level. We're all a little hypocritical now and then. The problem is that today, fewer and fewer people seem to agree on the basics.
That joke would actually be a lot funnier if it was a Muslim.
That is.
I mean, I actually, legit, that would be a kind of funny joke if it had 2 Muslims on
The problem is that not enough people agree with Owen Benjamin on the basics as to what is funny. That is the problem with comedy today. Now, here is our buddy Nathan Bernard interspersed that video with another funny bit that Owen Benjamin did. And if you don't find it funny, it's just because you, unfortunately for comedy, don't share the same understanding of the world. Here it is.
Comedy is important, but identity politics is killing the gag. How many times have you heard someone say something like this? You're not black, so you don't know what it's like to be me. Look, there's the chain. It's been sawed in half. Someone definitely took my bike. It couldn't be the black guy over there sitting on the thing that looks exactly like my bike. Because everyone thinks, everyone gives black people a hard time, and I'm not going to be a racist, even though it does have my name written on it the exact way I wrote my name on it. Should I say something? No. I don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes, but that nigger stole my bike! That nigger stole my bike! You're a racist.
Jesus.
Yeah. Now, the funny part is that people should understand is that
Maybe he needs to explain it to us some more so we can understand it.
It's just
There's
so
gonna
funny.
be a
Like
Prager University video on why
yesterday,
that joke was funny.
Like apparently, Leslie Jones was on The View. I think that yesterday, or the day before, and it's just and also like Judy Gold. I did watch. She did do this Vice thing where she was like, "Yeah, college kids are ridiculous and they don't get comedy." And Leslie Jones was like, "People need to stop like digging up old bits and bothering comedians on Twitter, basically." And I agree with all those sentiments completely. But what's just amazing is like these guys use this like sort of Twitter culture war rhetoric to just slide in like it's not even comedy. That's just racism.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. There's no satire. There's nothing like we're going to play an edge here for a payoff. That's just like you want to say that word, dude. That's it.
Yeah.
Well,
I think there's a lot. I think that's a lot. There's a lot to that.
I think a lot of comedy does work because people have common experiences with the comedian. But if somebody is that fucking racist, like, I'm not going to identify with that. Like, I don't think any of us here would have a problem, like, if we saw someone stealing our bike to say, like, fuck you, give me my bike back. But
well, I would say,
not if they were black.
Me.
If they were black, I would be like, I was just interviewing Marisa Baradaran on the history of banking and capitalism in this country, so please take my bike. And also, I apologize. That's the character that they. But like Howard Stern had stuff all the time on his show, which genuinely, like, I mean, it was funny, but you could argue either way. I think, like, if you wanted to evaluate it politically, like where the line was of what was actually being mocked. But you could always make the case that, you know, that the object of the satire, like, was actually those racial attitudes.
Right.
But in a way that really, yes, for people who are too uptight and don't have a sense of humor and triggered by words and are literalists, they would be offended by it. But he wasn't just doing that. Like,
Right.
that's just garbage.
Right.
That's not comedy.
Right. It's a guy. I mean, first of all, look, the tip-off is when you got to lean on the piano.
Right.
That's a tip-off.
It's like, dude, you just want to use the word. You don't want to say, I'm going to go for something and pull off using that word, and I might fail.
Now,
you just want to use the word because you're an asshole. Sorry.
With all that we had to say about Owen Benjamin being, full of crap about his attempting to justify the importance of comedy. And look, I made a ton of money via comedy in one form or another. So on some level, it's important to me. But in terms of society, the idea that Owen Benjamin can't play at a college campus could not have less importance in any shape or form. The idea that you would not get paid $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to perform at a college, I can assure you, colleges will be better off if they don't pay for headline comedians. It's not necessary. It is a draw on student activities funds, which could be spent other places in more interesting ways. So I don't think there's a net negative to be found. with all that said about Owen Benjamin, here is his finest hour, where he talks about how much he resents all the people in the what is it?
The intellectual dark web.
The intellectual
This is
dark
by far
web.
his best. He's been somebody who I've just, regardless of content, I've always been like, how is this guy even a comedian? He's profoundly unfunny. I finally get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's this is his finest hour, and of course, like all conservatives, it comes out of his own sense of being aggrieved.
Keeping a list of the people that when you're down, they take shots. They take little shots. And when fuck Eric Weinstein, man. When I lost my Twitter is when he told me I was bad for his brand and that we weren't going to be close friends anymore and I was filled with too much chaos. Oh, you think maybe it's because I don't have 126,000 followers that can help spread your shit? Is that maybe not part of it? Or you got a chill, a little shiver that if you speak your mind that the powerful people in Silicon Valley can take it all from you, and that made you a little scared, made you rethink your friendships. Which one is it? Which fucking one is it? Because I know it's not chaos, because you're friends with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's the most chaotic person I've ever met. Granted, he's very disciplined, but he'll be like, oh, dude, today it's all about freezing your dick and shooting a bow and arrow and taking mushrooms, doing comedy, and then shooting guns. Like, okay, so that isn't chaotic? Oh, wait a minute. It's about money and power, huh? And not about ethics, and not about doing the right thing or any of this shit. But I'm the bad guy, right? I'm the fucking bad guy. You bunch of coward fucks. Intellectual dark web. More like intellectual fag web. Bunch of fags. Oh, don't say that word. I mean, listen, we're here for free speech and we're here for free expression, but not these words and not this statement. And if you do this, we won't hang out with you. Oh, and never make fun of Sam Harris because he's our atheist Jesus. Sam Harris is their leader, by the way. Just know that. He's the guy that they all get scared of. Sam fucking Big Ears Harris. His mom invented Golden Girls. He's a rich kid from LA. He was born with a silver spoon in his dick hole. Golden Girls. You know how much money that is? You know how much money he was raised with? That's why he could sit for 20 days in a goddamn no talking retreat in the woods. You want to know why? Because the fucker has a trust fund.
Thank you.
Yeah. Fuck you forever.
Fuck you forever. No one wants to be friends with me anymore. Is it because I'm banned from Twitter? They loved my fag jokes when my Twitter was still up.
That's right.
Totally unfair.
It is one of...
But the most perfect description of Sam Harris, I'm sorry, like, to the T. That is there's really nothing else. I mean, I'm writing a book about it, so I guess I shouldn't say this, but what else do you need to know about Sam Harris?
Here is what I would ask people to do. Please go over, give that video a click. It would be so awesome if Owen Benjamin's career could just turn into turning on all those people.
Yes.
That would be fun. And these guys follow the clicks all the time.
The intolerant IDW.
That's right.
It's just, all of a sudden, by the end of it, he's like, and that's why I'm an advocate for reparations. And I'm a classical moderate.
The international fag web.
yeah. The IFW. Go for it,
God.
dude. That's all you.
It's so good to watch these assholes destroy each other, turn against one another, because they're essentially antisocial. That's their whole entire ideology. So, of course, they're not going to get along. They're going to cannibalize each other in ways that are funny to watch.
It's also like, I also like the angle because I really do, with Joe Rogan, like, his relationship with Sam Harris is super bizarre. And I actually like the idea of, like, the angle for Rogan being like, dude, like, spread your wings. Why are you afraid of this, like, this nasty nerd Ben Stiller guy? Like, come on, buddy.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 928 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Oh, what happened? 928.
How you doing, my dude?
Hello? 928.
Sam, can you hear me?
Yes? Who is this?
Hello?
Hello?
Sam, Sam, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello?
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 Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You can't hear me.
I can hear
All right.
you.
Good Lord, Sam. This is your man NJPW, man. How you living?
NJPW, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yes. Man, I'm good, man. Just before I start my call, I just want to say I appreciate Michael Brooks and all you guys clipping my call where, I expressed fear of my woman and the mother of my son being taken away because she's not a citizen. You guys clipped that, and I showed it to my son. I showed it to my woman, and it really brought a lot of happiness, and it took away a little fear that I have of that and the anxiety associated with that. Much appreciated.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So, it's kind of weird talking to you, Sam, because all the times I've called, you ain't even in, man. You got one of them no-show jobs, man. I salute you for that.
Well, that's
He's on the four-day work week.
That's what you got to do. I mean, I read that I read that futurist prediction, and I said I'm going to make it happen. So, all right. So, what's on your mind today? You got me. Let's.
All right. So, first of all, I just want to say, who doesn't get enough credit in the Trump administration for not having their name out there, man? You don't hear nothing about Linda McMahon.
That's true. She's been laying low as the Small Business Administration.
Yeah. I mean, how you taking Stone Cold Stunners, you know what I'm saying, getting Tombstone outside the ring, and all the crazy shit that went on in WWE, and she has managed to actually just do the job with no scandals, man.
Well,
that's wild.
There's a lot of scandals probably, ahead of hers if she had any, and I'm sure, the Small Business Administration is not necessarily, one of the premier. Is that what she is? She's the head of the Small Business Administration. No, it's not. It's not the.
Yeah. Yep.
Of all the other problems we have, there's a lot more. Yesterday, Jeff Sessions said that they're creating a religious freedom task force, and that was like the 10th story.
I'm also doing some things ahead.
Well, she has the advantage of being in charge of an agency that the Trump administration is not trying to destroy, as far as I know.
Right.
How do we really define small business?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to share with you is actually I used to for a little while I actually was I was living in Arizona for most of 2017 because, believe it or not, I was actually recovering from 2 gunshot wounds that I got walking to work.
Oh, jeez.
In 2016, I was actually on my way to work. I was walking to work in East Oakland, and I was literally, I'm not bullshitting, there's a news story about it and everything. I was beaten, and then I was shot twice from my work laptop, basically.
Oh,
and so while I was recovering from that, I stayed with, I'm serious, I could link you to the article.
I believe
while I
you.
was
I'm
recovering
sorry.
from that, it's good, man. It's crazy. I'm a veteran. Didn't get shot overseas, but I get clapped a couple blocks from my crib.
Jesus Christ.
But basically, my son and my woman, we stayed in Arizona near the border, and we stayed there just so I could try to recover and try to get my mind right, etc. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I live near a bunch of Trump supporters and this and that, right? So looking at that New York Times article that came out about how, if you're a white liberal, don't give up on your racist homies or whatever. And I'm like, let me tell y'all why that shit is useless.
All right, let me just hold on.
Every day we drive.
And hold on. Let me just
piece was
let
this?
people know. There was a piece in the New York Times that literally said, white liberals, you're talking to racists wrong.
And just to be clear, so this is not, because there was a piece a couple weeks ago.
No,
that
this was 2 days ago. This was
okay,
2 days ago. This was a white woman who was talking about how it was a pretty muddled piece, because at one point she's saying these folks are racist, but they're not super racist. And if you just approach them and explain, then something magical will happen, supposedly. There was a it was a poorly written piece that didn't seem to make any argument other than white liberals just lay off and allow.
That's nice. It was probably next to some new piece by like some
Right.
researcher somewhere being
but
like,
go
you
ahead.
got to be open to IQ stuff.
Right. But
Thanks, Times
go ahead.
editorial page.
No problem. So check it out, man. So this dude who lived about one house down from us in Yuma, Arizona, he had these flags up about, you know, crooked Hillary and deplorable and this and that and the other. And I decided, me being me, I'm like, you know what? You know, because Trump had just gotten elected, you know, and I'm, you know, and I'm like, you know what? Let me reach on the other side of the aisle, you know. I mean, and so I walked over, you know, with my crutches at the time, and I actually tried to talk to the guy, and he hit me with these talking points like, oh, well, you know, the left has gone just too far left, and, you know, we want real change, and he did something that, like, you know, he talked about how, like, oh, I hate every race the same and this and that and the other. Like, he was obviously racist and this and that, but I literally just honestly wanted to try to get his point of view, right? So he's sitting there giving me all these bullshit talking points and this and that. And I listened to him, and, you know, like I got his point of view. He was an idiot, whatever, but I'm like, okay, at least I heard his side, right? And I explained to him, oh, look, I'm a veteran, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I wasn't trying to be one of those, I'm not one of those types of black folks. I was like,
Right.
no, like, I'm very much to the left, this and that and the other. So check this out, man. A few days later, he knocks on my door, and I was asleep, you know, either that or I was on Mad Percocets, one or the other. And he comes to the door, and my woman answers, and my son answers, and he asking to speak to me, and my woman was like telling me in Spanish, like, I think he's drunk. And, you know, I'm like, okay, let me talk to him. He asked me, because at the time I had a beard, he asked me, so when did you join the Muslim Brotherhood? I said, what?
God.
I knew it as soon as
He
you
like
said
is
beard. I
asking
knew it.
me. Yeah, he starts asking me about, like, you know, so the organizations like Black Lives Matter, like, what kind of terrorist links do they have? And I'm like, sir, I don't know what you're talking about, but the one thing I can say is his wife and their friends run over him, and they're like telling him, like, look, leave the guy alone, like, he's with his family, blah blah blah. They were like actually trying to talk some sense into him, but he was also strapped. Now, the thing is that, like, you know, they apologized and this and that and the other. Now, listen to me, man. Like, I haven't had a gun since I was in the service, you know? But it was the first time I thought, especially after being, like I said, I'm a victim of unfortunate robbery. It was the time, like, well, maybe I need a gun, blah, 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 blah. Yes. But I'm like, nah, fuck that. If I need, you know, if I need a gun, then that means I'm living in fear, and I'm not bitch made like that, so I'm not going out like that, you know? So it was just a moment where I was thinking, like, man, excuse my language, man, fuck these motherfuckers, man. You can't reach them. You can't talk to them. They're not trying to hear it. And I was after that, like, I'm reading these articles and this and that. It's like they want to hear from this minority of people who can't be changed or whatever, but they don't want to hear from the individuals who these policies really affect, where his BS is really affecting. You know, no one, like you guys said the other day, no one wants to come into Black and Latino neighborhoods and say, you know what kind of changes from the left that can happen that'll make you motivated to vote. No, we got to hear about these stupid motherfuckers who are willingly ready to lose their jobs because they, you know, want to continue to support this guy.
Right.
And the one person I really wish was here right now to help, you know, Michael, they always talk about where's Ja Rule, that joke.
Yeah.
Dog, I really wish Patrice O'Neal was here to help me make sense of this shit, man.
Agree. I think if you listen to some of those clips, it's so weird because it's, you know, it's like a radio show, but he's fielding all of these different versions of what you're talking about on the radio, and it's embarrassing. And I agree. I mean, I think the distinction between, like, there's one argument is don't categorize every white person who has a certain income in a stereotypical way, which I think is just factually important. Then there's, like, can you flip a handful of people to vote the right way? Well, hopefully. But then the broader point, I agree with you. I'm totally. I mean, why not a column from the New York Times about what your experience as a veteran being accused of being a Muslim Brotherhood operative is? I mean, it is pretty disgusting.
This piece in particular that you're talking about, I just want to read the last the last like paragraph or two, just like how muddled, like what's going on in the mind of this woman, Margaret Ranke, is it? Rankle.
Oh, well, that's a racist name.
I don't know. I don't know anything about her, but she's just she's a contributing opinion editor, opinion writer who covers flora, fauna, politics, and culture in the American South.
God,
all right,
stick to flora and fauna.
And if you are a white liberal whose goal is to feel morally superior to such people, right? That is the grumpy old neighbor who voted for Donald Trump out of frustration with Washington, the high school classmate who posted an Obama joke on Facebook, the white woman on the plane who tenses up when a Middle Eastern sits down in the seat beside her. There's sort of,
Even that is conflating things that annoys me.
Exactly.
Right?
Like the old grumpy voter who voted for Donald Trump out of frustration with Washington is pretty different from the white woman who sees a Muslim and tenses up by the very presence of a Muslim.
Or the guy putting a Obama was like an ape
monkey
joke on Facebook is
That's
different.
a little different.
Yeah, you know what? The old guy who voted for Trump.
If you're a white liberal whose goal is to feel superior about such people, Michael, go right ahead and urge them to check their white privilege. Call them stupid rednecks.
On the other hand, stupid rednecks.
On the other hand, and you haven't made a single thing better for anyone suffering. Somehow, you haven't made a single thing better for anyone suffering the actual effects of racism. But when has that ever stopped a white person from airing a little righteous indignation? Let me just start with this. You can do both. You can be righteously indignant and actually help someone who's suffering from racism. They're not mutually exclusive. They don't have to happen at the same time. If, on the other hand, you're a white liberal whose goal is to foster a more equitable culture, you need to stop yelling racist at anyone who doesn't see the world exactly as you do, as in, like, you should be inherently afraid of a black guy, or, you should always be concerned that a Muslim is a terrorist, or if the president's black, it's okay to call him a monkey. That may not be as you do. Somehow you need to find enough common ground for a real conversation about race. Very few people are stupid or irredeemably mean. They'll listen to what you have to say if they trust you. Let me ask you this, NJPW. Do you think this guy would have listened? Like, could you have a conversation with him about race? Like, hey, man, I know look, could we just sit down and have a conversation about race? How amenable to that do you think he'd be?
I think that, whatever his preconceived notions he would have, all he would be looking for is his own confirmation bias. And there's no way you can reach someone whose ideology is based on hate. I've said it since the beginning. The moment Donald Trump said Mexicans are this and that and the other, there was no reasoning with that. And if you reasoned with it in any way, shape, or form, you were already racist. So this article, Sam, Michael, this is that Yakubian left shit I'm talking about. This is exactly what it is. This is the Yakubian tendencies coming out.
I agree. Let me use
just the last thing I want to say is I hope to I just want to say I will call in again, Michael, if I can call. I'll try to call in your show while my son's at jiu-jitsu practice, and I want to discuss me being detained at the border for about 3 hours. Yeah. I got detained. I had an ID and everything. It didn't matter. They detained me for 3 hours, and I'll tell you about that. But, yeah, like I said, when I talk about Yakubian left and Yakubian tendencies, they want you to reason with people who hate you, who have always been on top, and this and that and the other. But like you said, they don't want to talk to people hey, you know what, you might be deported. Or, hey, you know what, your black ass might get shot on some stand your ground shit, and no one's gonna care when they try to take a parking spot argument. No one cares about that. But we should feel sorry for people who voted for a man while they're losing I lost my farm. Yo, my man lost his life.
I hear.
So, that's just what I wanted to say.
I'll give you an even more prosaic example. There was a woman. She was my a landlord. Last year I was in college. I rented a room in this house. And, very nice, whatever. She was from the South, and this was during the Obama election. So she would come to me with her Obama conspiracies because she was both, like, you're a smart young man, and I know you like Obama. So, like, did the Saudis pay for him to go to Harvard Law? Like, literally on a week in, week out basis. And I'm not even kidding you. Exactly. And I remember though, but and this to me was, I never did any of that because I don't think it's terribly effective for particularly somebody like that to use like jargon that's popular on college campuses. But I do remember it wasn't even a big thing, but she just said like, well, you don't think that like the problems with race in this country are just because of like white people. Black people have done a lot to create them too, right? And I just was like, I forgot how I said it because I still had to pay rent and deal with her, but it was just like, we don't have anything to talk about anymore.
Right.
Like we're cool. I don't hate you. But like we're not, this isn't going anywhere. And actually, especially because I was polite, obviously because I was white, she had a certain kind of like, she was like, yeah, maybe I guess that's wrong, isn't it? And that actually was a healthy shame. It was like, yeah, don't come to me with this bullshit. It's nonsense.
Good.
And it actually
but
most people
but the
wouldn't
reality
work.
is right.
For most people, wouldn't work.
That's all well and good in
but
that
I'm saying
moment.
In contrast with that article, though,
Right.
Think about it.
But she's going to go back to her friends
100%.
and go back all
and
in.
what an arrogant kid from Bates.
Well,
and
maybe
he doesn't
not
know
even
anything.
that. She'll
Yep.
just ignore it and move on with the next conspiracy theory. But appreciate the call, man.
Do you have a Twitter or some way that we can keep in touch with you?
Thanks, yo.
Wait, you got Twitter? What's your Twitter? Do you have a Twitter?
Yeah, actually, what you guys don't know, what y'all don't know is I'm actually a pretty not famous in any way, but as far as music goes, if you Google my music name, which is Cole Cole James Cash, there are actually a ton of articles about me musically. There's a long one that's like 8 pages long on Medium. You know, my music work as far as I don't rap, but I do production. But if you Google Cole James Cash, all kinds of stuff about my music will come up, man. So yes, that's my Twitter, Cole James Cash, etc. Like in the rap world, I have a little niche going on, and so Michael, you know this rapper Sky Zoo?
Yeah, I've heard that name.
Yeah, we have a song together, etc. I've done all kinds of BS music, man. I'm not trying to plug my music, but I am saying Cole James Cash is how you can get a hold of me.
Cool.
And low key, brother, Allahu Akbar.
Yo, the black man is God, and Sam.
Yes.
Don't think that I'm not watching you, dog. You know, shout out Farrakhan.
There we go. They appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And, very cool, man.
Yes, I'm totally down with it.
This article, I'm just reading it for the first time, but it seems to just be the whole premise is just, or the solution is like, make me comfortable. The woman who really has nothing at risk in any of this.
Absolutely absurd. Like, it's beyond absurd. It's like poorly written, so it gets a little bit, it's like.
She thinks she's really quite the stylist.
She basically defines people as racist and then says, but they're not really racist. They just see things differently than you.
And by the way, just being a liberal and voting for Hillary Clinton doesn't necessarily get you off the hook for racism either.
Does she does she claim that she's that? Well, I don't even know if she is a liberal as much as she's just explaining to liberals. But
it has that vibe. It has a whiff of that about it.
There's a documentary called Color of Fear, which is basically it's super early 90s. It's just several men basically, like, they went off to a cabin and they talk about race for a weekend, and they come from different backgrounds, and the breakthrough point with this white guy, one of the white guys, is very stereotypical and intransigent and very racially blind. There's a big breakthrough. It actually does come through discomfort and confrontation. It isn't like a weekend of everybody being like, you're a great guy. And then he's like, you know what? I actually realize the police shouldn't pull you over and beat the shit out of you anymore because you've been so polite to me.
Look, the reality is, folks, that the way that people change their minds is through all the things that make them uncomfortable.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's just the reality.
Literally across the board.
It's just the reality of it.
Discomfort's good for you.
How else could you give up?
Discomfort's good for you.
How else can you give up organizing principles and thoughts of your life and it not be uncomfortable? How could that possibly happen?
And It's chaos, and that's when the bitches come in.
Calling from a 266 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 266.
Hello.
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 Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. 266.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm calling from Germany.
Yes. Hello, Germany. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if you could hear me. Okay. Yeah, I'm active here in Germany in the left-wing party, and I was pretty much always informed about U.S. politics, and I wanted to talk about you to have some form of exchange about how to market left-wing ideas in a better way, because I see some deficits in the form the U.S. Debate is going on about democratic socialism and stuff like that, but also you have a far more vivid social movement right now, and in Germany it's basically not even existing, but of course the circumstances are different.
Well, what do you see the deficits that we have?
Yeah, so for example, pretty nervous right now. So for example, I really see a problem. So for example, you have pretty good circumstances when it comes to these Soviet Union equations, for example, if you have stuff like that, because you live in basically a nation which is under the biggest surveillance state the world has probably ever seen, and you have you have giant, now almost militarized police, you have basically an oligarchy, centralized economy, centralized media to a huge extent. So I ask myself, why don't you capitalize on that, so that you say, okay, they are the ones who want the Soviet Union, we are the ones who want to stop that from happening here.
So you're saying that just from a marketing standpoint, accuse them of being more Soviet Union style in their approach. The problem is that we are much further away from, I think, the sort of the visions of the Soviet Union in terms of time than would be effective. And I also would say that, frankly, any notions that your average American has of the Soviet Union is so cartoonish that making an actual analog in that way is wasted. It's just like honestly, like for the vast majority of Americans, there's no sophistication about what the Soviet Union was other than an evil empire. And so, I mean, it literally, I mean, as I say that, like the premier Soviet, Cold Warrior of the modern era, maybe the last one, was Ronald Reagan, and literally called them the evil empire. I mean, it was like Star Wars. And so, I mean, there's no sophistication. There's no like, look at the problems that you think you had with the Soviet Union was because of centralized control and, spying. And no, it was just not that sophisticated of a critique that existed here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The problem with, I think, Europeans is that they perceive Americans as being far more knowledgeable than they are. I think your average, just based on my own experience, your average European, my experience with Australia was that the average Australian knew far more about questions of government and had just a much more sophisticated understanding of government and politics and whatnot. I mean, that's just the truth. That's why they call us elites in our East Coast, studios.
Okay, I understand. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you if I can.
Yes, please.
and especially that you hardly question, like, I call it the state doctrine, or Noam Chomsky would call it the state religion. And this is where in this economic system you basically get what you worked for, and this is something you hardly questioned as much as I've seen it. Because that's basically I discussed with a lot of conservatives also from the U.S. and I really saw that this is something which moves them a lot when you question that because in their mind a lot of them just internalized, okay, when someone, for example, Donald Trump has $3 billion, then he also has worked for it. And when someone is poor, of course, they haven't worked for it, or they are lazy or something like that. And I framed it like that, that you basically, I told them, okay, when you work in a company, you generate profit. And but you don't get the profit, you get a wage, which is lower than the profit. And the difference between profit and wages, these are taxes you pay to a corporate owner. But
Right.
the difference is that these taxes are today really high, and of course you don't get them back. They don't get spent on bridges or hospitals or
Right.
schools or something like that.
Right.
And that framing, that because they really hate to lose money to other people, and they completely never see that a wage is what you get after you have lost money. And that way I saw that a lot of people actually change their minds. And you could also say that I call that private tax, that we pay a private tax in a company. And what do you think about that notion of that framing?
I mean,
that one could basically.
I think that's pretty good.
Market with that.
I think that's pretty good. I mean, I don't like to demonize taxes that much, but yeah, I mean, I think people don't understand the sort of that it's that arbitrage between someone's labor and what they can sell something for is, you know, they're taking from that. Yes. And
I agree.
Yeah, but
Like the concept of a fair day's wage for a fair day's work, it just completely conceals what we were just talking about. And I think taxes is kind of a good way to frame it, especially considering that this tax is an upward transfer to the bosses who own the means of like. I'm always trying to figure out how to explain this stuff without using jargon, and I think that's really good.
I mean, I prefer theft on some level because like tax to me is something you pay as a dues to society. It's not something that you pay to an individual, you know, so that you can get some type of kickback, I guess. So that, but
company is in the end just some form of small state. It has basically a government, has an economy, and there, of course, when you work there, you pay taxes. But for example, in a cooperative, you would also pay taxes, but you would have democratic control over how high these taxes are. And that's, in my opinion, the difference. Because I also encountered people who basically then told me, but of course, the McDonald's can take 90% of your profits and pay you back a wage after that because they gave you these huge opportunities, etc. But then I countered, but then why do you say that any tax is theft? Then you could also argue, okay, the state offers you a lot of opportunities and you have to pay something back. And I think.
I mean, I don't have that same perspective on. I mean, I think the state is. It's a different type of vehicle, or it should be. And so, I mean, I just again, I don't want to use taxes in that way, just from a rhetorical standpoint.
I think the important part is that you make people aware of what's being taken from them.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
I appreciate the call.
Okay, thank you.
You all right?
Yeah.
Germans are so polite.
So polite.
Until they're not.
Even when they're talking about expropriating the means of production.
I don't know if they're always polite.
Let's go.
They do not like those kinds of jokes.
I don't care.
Man, I tried to. I made a Holocaust joke in Germany one time, and they did not like it. I was like, you know what? I'm allowed to say that, okay? And they know.
You know what's funny is I like how you went from like they don't like those jokes to like a indirect one I made on air in Brooklyn. You're just like I was in Germany just serving them up Holocaust jokes.
All right, we're gonna take
it was bad. Not gonna do it again.
One more call. We'll go to a 408 caller. Sorry, folks, we got 18 callers on the line. Calling from a 408 number. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, my name is Ash, and I'm from San Jose.
Ash from San Jose. What's on your mind?
So, yeah, I really like your show, and I've been watching for a while. And but so I've been following your libertarian videos, which are really amusing to me.
Thank you.
And I more or less agree with you on the libertarian position, but I think that I know it's been like sort of like beating a dead horse, but I think there's a kind of a major blind spot on the left. It's more of a comment than a question. I just graduated from a liberal arts college, St. Mary's, and I'm left. I'm very liberal on almost everything, but in a traditional or a typical like English classroom, because I majored in English, you can hardly say anything, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not by any means exaggerating to the extent to which there's a kind of a soft censorship that's going on. And it does cast a kind of chilling effect on free speech. And what do you think about that issue?
Well, I wasn't in
it's been like
I wasn't in your class at St. Mary's, but I think that it's conceivable to me that we're overshooting stuff a little bit in terms of people's sensitivities. But I would say this, for the vast majority of our existence as a country, for the vast majority of the existence of that institution you went to, I say this without being aware of it directly, but even just I can know the confidence that undoubtedly there were things that made women, black people, brown people, gay people sitting in those classrooms 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago that they felt was incredibly chilling as to them expressing their opinions. And
oh yeah, no doubt.
And there was no outlet to express that. And not only did it happen in that classroom, it happened at the job, at their work, in social environments, in representations on television, and in the media. And so my feeling is this. To change culture, you cannot hit things. Like there's no like we're gonna do this exact. This is gonna be so precise. We're gonna land right here on this target, and things are gonna be better.
I agree with you.
I feel, this is my personal opinion, that invariably things will go a little too far, and we're gonna have to dial it back. But if we didn't go too far, if the dominant culture that has been chilling everyone else in our society is not put on their heels and is not put in that same situation, we will not find the proper equilibrium. It just won't happen any other way.
Can I add one little caveat to that, though? One point. So I agree with you that the basic the dominant position 20 years ago, even now, but was sort of, there was a chilling effect for minorities, women, etc. And I'm like the biggest fans of people like Paul Krugman, Joseph Stiglitz, so I basically agree with everything. But the thing is, I think that the problem is that I think the so-called like the right wing, the alt-right, right? They have, because they have even a fraction of the truth on their side, all they need is a fraction of the truth for them to score points with their side of the electorate, right? I mean, they might be saying noxious stuff like 99 out of 100 instances, but if they have just one element of truth, and the one element that they have is that, because I've been reading
but
John Stuart Mill's...
dude.
But wait, one sec. So
I know what
I've been reading John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, and the point is you have to be able to discuss with people, right? Like, you can literally have the wrong word in a poem, and someone will yell at you. And that's happened to me multiple times just because I wrote, like, the wrong word. It wasn't, like, it wasn't a abusive word. It was just the wrong word, you know?
And then what happened?
Well, like, there was... So I actually broke down crying in class because that person was ridiculous. The teacher luckily took my side, but she, in a way, fueled the fire because she got the class to misinterpret my poem in a way that misconstrued it as kind of an anti-feminist poem. It wasn't that, though, but it was misconstrued as that, right?
You know what it sounds like to me? You and everybody else in that class had something to learn. And if you ended up breaking down and crying because you felt attacked by that person, maybe that person felt attacked by you, and launched this attack. Your educational experience, excuse me, let me finish. Your educational experience is that much for the better. It's that much for the better.
Reach out to me on Twitter. I edit on the side anti-feminist poetry. If you're interested.
But listen.
It's not particularly anti-feminism. It's just an example of...
It was a joke.
Well, first off, it might be. Right?
No, but it's not. I mean, I can read you what I wrote. It was not.
Okay,
not that.
all right. Read me what you wrote. Wait a second.
Okay,
I want to hear this.
Okay, so I have the. Okay, let me go to my living room because I have it right here.
I mean, I think you need to be able to entertain the possibility that it might be.
Well.
You need to entertain the possibility that it might be anti-feminist.
I want to hear it.
I mean, okay, one sec. Let me pull it up because I have it. And
Should
the thing
the
is,
chicken
the crazy, the crazy thing is that the following week, a guy wrote a poem essentially on sexual assault, right? Literally condoning it. I mean, not really, but he was very graphic. No one said a single thing, but so I'll read you the line that...
Are you sure it's not that people are just not
annoyed.
picking on you, Ash, as opposed to like, I mean, all right, good. Read me the line. Read me the poem.
Okay, the line was...
No, it has to be
the line was, this part from a poem I wrote, right? I want to inspire you to be Rosie the Riveter. Although I may be riveting on occasion, I'm never aglow. So just one line I had right here.
That is the most sexist thing I've ever heard in my
Wait a sec. So let me just do this here. Okay. So do the line again. We'll just get Michael to stop. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is sort of a general poem in which, it's a big poem in which this is one line, right? I want to inspire you to be Rosie the Riveter, and though I may be riveting on occasions, I'm never aglow. And then it goes on with other stuff.
So right? What did they say was problematic? What was problematic?
Well, you mean what did she think was problematic, or what do I think was problematic?
What did she think was problematic?
Well, she thought that I was telling other females to be feminists, which, first of all, I am not saying anything. My character in the poem is saying something, which is really important. When you're in a creative writing class, you are making characters, right? They are not necessarily you.
Right. No, I agree.
Second of all,
I've been there, yeah.
But she thought the character was saying. First of all, she thought the character was me, and then she thought that the character was like mandating that all women be feminists, like Rosie the Riveter, right? Although it was not that, not at all. I mean, the whole poem had another message, and this line fit into that other message.
What is the message of? What is the message of? I want to inspire you to be Rosie the Riveter. What is that? What is that? How would you characterize that?
As a line, it means, I don't know what it means as a line, because it.
What if it said, "I want to inspire you to be Betty Crocker"? Go into the kitchen.
I don't really. Okay, but if you take, I mean, you listen to music, right? I mean,
No, listen, I get what you're saying. I'm just saying, listen, Ash,
Can
I don't want to, I don't want to.
with the note?
Yeah, no, I understand. Listen, I just don't want to get too, I don't want to get too far afield here. I'm just saying that, look, if she,
what's left?
I'm just
Oh,
interested.
really?
I'm
You
interested.
don't, do
listen,
you?
I think, listen, the idea is this. She may have been right. She may have been wrong. It is a good exercise for you to examine your own work and to see how it's perceived. And then you make an assessment as to whether or not she's right or wrong on this.
And okay.
I would listen to
speaking-
Ether and write a poem based on that song to put everything in perspective.
It does sound to me like your class was, I don't know.
Mean to you.
Was
and
it the whole
ridiculous.
class, or was it just
maybe
this
the
woman?
teacher was went a little overboard.
The
maybe,
teacher
was a
supposedly
little
defended
nutso,
her.
assuming
The teacher set up the interpretation of my poem so as to let the girl make the comment, which which made me look like a really bad guy in front of the whole class.
Dude,
And
here's the point.
Okay.
Here's the point. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're gonna be fine.
It matters to
Okay.
him. All right, look.
No.
Speaking
can we just,
as a writer,
Oh.
all right, I've been a professional writer for
Stop. If you don't
many
want to be a
years
part,
now.
you can go. You can go.
As a writer, if that's something you want to do, you're gonna get shit a whole lot worse than that.
Yeah.
So
oh, sure.
you need to have the courage of your convictions and stand up for your own work. And this is good practice for doing that. If you really believe in what you're doing and you don't think that they're right about it, you gotta brush it off, because let me tell you, when you start publishing your work on the internet, that is a fucking cakewalk compared to what people are going to say to and about you.
Oh, yeah. I agree with you there. Yeah.
And I don't think you can
I agree.
look. I don't think you can generalize from this one experience you had with this woman that there's like some broad problem with chilling.
No,
what
I
you're
have
doing.
many other examples. I just gave you one.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I mean, hang in there, and it's always
I
good.
graduated, thankfully. Thankfully, I survived the school. But I'm serious that there are no males in the English major, and there are increasingly less white males, because it's like one girl in class said that.
Hold on. Now you've gotten Matt's.
I was a white male English major in college. I did well. My professor mentioned me in his book dedication recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, do tell. Hold on. Matt has something to say too.
Yeah, I also went to English. I graduated with an English degree, and I do not like. That sounds like how English class is supposed to go. Like, you use Rosie Riveter as a male in a poem, you're going to have some people interrogate your usage of that, whether it's patronizing or whether it's something or other. That's the process of poetry. I'm sorry, but that's just what it is. So like that's how like
It was more the way it was done, not the actual comment.
But I
I
think you're getting too caught up on the way, man. Like you gotta if it's it. The problem is, like, are you anti-feminist?
I am not an anti-feminist. In fact, I am much more a feminist than much of my friends.
Okay, so
it's ridiculous.
So if that's the case, then like continue writing your poems, and that should be apparent. And if it's not apparent to everyone after like a significant number of poems, you still keep getting feedback saying, "Hey, your use of this reference seems anti-feminist." You should maybe take them more seriously. But if it's just one girl in English class, like, you'll be fine. You'll still graduate.
It was just one girl in an English class, but the point is that the class was like,
All I'm saying is
I have
this. Listen,
other-
Ash.
I
Listen,
have other
listen.
examples in
Hang in there,
non-poetry classes
dude.
that
Hang in
have
there.
the same effect.
Hang in there. You're gonna be fine. You
All
just
right.
keep doing what you're doing. Take Matt's advice. He's very good on these things. The guy runs a literary podcast, for God's sakes. All right,
An
hang in there,
I
Matt.
have to check out his podcast.
Hang in there.
Yeah.
You know, I would take his advice. You keep writing you want. It's good for you to have to defend your stuff, right? And if you continually get those comments, I think it's also good for you to start to do some self-examination. Try and figure out what they're saying. Try and figure it out, honestly. And if you can't, you can't. But I mean, I think it's worthwhile endeavor. I appreciate the call.
Rosie Riveter.
Hang in there. Exactly. Rosie Riveter would not give up. And I think
given up.
I want to inspire you to be like Rosie Riveter. All right? Hang in there, dude. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the call. All right. We got no more time for calls.
Matt comes in and bum rushes. That's amazing.
Matt is wise.
Matt's just like, listen, wait a second. You can't deal with another interpretation.
All right. I got, let's do 6 IMs, and then we're out of here. Sean, Sam, in the 90s, San Francisco, Golden Gate Park, my nickname was the test pilot. 4 grams, take it from a professional. I'm impressed. Oh, well, thank you. Quagmire, Sam, when you go to Netroots, please start asking any elected Democrats if you talk to if they'll support doubling Social Security payments to beneficiaries. Doubling it? All right. Frame it like this. Social Security was created to keep elderly people out of poverty. In its current rate, it's not working. I'd love to hear some responses. I bet you they will all say expand it. I don't know double, but we'll see. Better call Rudy. Imagine the billboards. Left is preferable. It is likely that Cynthia Nixon wins the Democrat. Is it likely that if Cynthia Nixon wins the Democratic primary, Cuomo will stay on the general election ballot? He's already secured the independence and a women's equality party line, so he could pull a Crowley and continue running the general. It's possible.
Women's equality.
But here's
party.
the point:
Lol.
if he was to do that, it would still destroy his future aspirations. We need to organize a fleet of riding lawnmowers to protest Rand Paul, says Bullprog. In light of Trump blasting the Kochs, Dave Rubin is taking a break from social media until September 4th for some reason. Wow, pretty cool. Dot Vodka, that fake Ross from Friends a-hole Jesse Waters. My father fled pre-independent Rhodesia. He came to the U.S. to get his bachelor's in electrical engineering, though the white draftsman refused to work on his plan, so he had to do his job and do the drafting himself, did contracting and photography after work. Jay Chivone, Sam hates math, but asks listeners to do the math when it determines how long to make it work. Come on. Damn, Owen Benjamin is doing an F you forever speech. Yes, exactly. Wu-Tang Clan, in Trump's tweet, powerful trade is the non-judgmental term for rough trade. Contagious chameleon, it's pretty telling that an African country that first comes to Jesse Waters' mind is Zimbabwe. Isn't that a tell of his right-wing media consumption, since there's an alt-right fever swamp over the former Rhodesia? Other African countries provide more refugees. In the final I am of the day, Roman Dennis Miller. The Koch brothers getting into a fight with Donald Trump is like Pompey getting into a fight with Crassus. Bop, bop, bop. Make SPQR Magnus again. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid.